better, but any and all of these Webster's versions will do for what I'm about to say. As a baker, teacher, and author of 10 bread books, I always frame the process in terms of another definition I coined. The baker's mission is to evoke the full potential of flavor trapped in the grain. It is as simple as that. The baker, who evokes the best flavor, wins. To accomplish this, one must employ all the tools of his or her craft in order to transform flour, water, salt, and yeast into something totally other. To change it in form, appearance, condition, nature, and character. To change it into another substance. To effect a transmutation. But here's the twist, as Edward S.B. Brown put it when he contributed to the jacket of my first book back in 1991. At the time, he was a baker and already the author of the Tassajara bread book. He put it with perfect symmetry and elegance. The baker makes the bread. The making of the bread transforms the baker. Which brings us back to Kendall Vanderslice and her aha-inducing insight that as soon as flour hits water, a series of transformations begins. This book, which is both a series of meditations and a collection of touching stories about her own journey of self-discovery, perfectly captures the symbiotic back and forth of how the baker and the making of the bread transform each other. Her unique confluence of life experiences, including her literary and theological training, has inspired Kendall to invoke beautifully crafted words that evoke this fascinating mystery. How does transformation occur? Continue on to find out. Peter Reinhardt, Charlotte, North Carolina. Preface. I was 5 years old when I stole my first communion. Our church, Richardson Heights Baptist, was celebrating its 40th anniversary. We were meeting in a local high school auditorium to accommodate all the members and guests who had come to mark the occasion. For us, it was a family celebration as much as a church party, marking 40 years since my grandparents had married just a month before planting the church. At the service, attendees overflowed the seating in the auditorium. As a result, my siblings and cousins and I sat in the aisle, next to a box of communion-to-go cups. Shots of grape juice with a cracker attached at the top, all sealed together with plastic. This wasn't the usual manner by which our church remembered Jesus' death and resurrection. It was just a convenient method for this celebration. I'd watched my parents take communion dozens of times before. Each month, when the elders passed silver platters of oyster crackers and tiny cups of grape juice down each pew. They'd eat their share discreetly before bowing in prayer. "We're thanking God for sending his son to die for our sins," they whispered to my brother Davis, my sister Alyssa, and me, encouraging us to mirror their solemn posture. Our tradition allowed children to take part in communion once they could articulate its meaning. Every so often, during our family prayer time on Sunday nights, we'd talk about the forgiveness of sins, about asking Jesus into our hearts, about baptism, an outward expression of inward cleansing. My parents prayed that God would prompt us to utter the words of the sinner's prayer whenever our hearts were ready. At 5, I hadn't asked Jesus into my heart yet, and I'd never eaten the cracker or the juice either. But that day, the box of Jesus' body and blood beckoned. I couldn't pay attention to the sermon, my gaze bouncing between the cardboard container and the preacher on stage. The low lighting masked my movements, and everyone else's eyes were fixed on the pastor. So I slipped my hand through a slit at the top of the box of communion cups, and I stole a portion for myself. I peeled back the packaging, careful not to make any noise that might alert my parents to my theft, and I placed the cracker on my tongue. The salty body stung at first, before it softened inside my mouth. I feared chewing might be too loud,